finally, there is the symbolism of silence itself. The ending does not give us loud battles or explosive revelations, it gives us hesitation, quiet grief, and looming dread. That silence is symbolic. It represents the moment before change, the pause before the storm. It tells us that the galaxy is holding its breath, waiting for the Mule to arrive, waiting for the Foundation to act, waiting for the Empire to finally shatter. In storytelling terms, this silence is more powerful than action. It allows us to feel the weight of what's coming next. That, in short, Episode 8's ending is not just a sequence of events, it is a mirror reflecting the grand ideas of the show. Fate against freedom, power built on illusion. Sacrifice that shapes the future, collapse as the doorway to rebirth, and silence as the voice of destiny. All of these themes come together in a way that makes the ending not just emotional, but unforgettable. The ending of Episode 8 is not just a conclusion, it is a setup, a careful arrangement of dominoes ready to fall in the final stretch of the season. Every silence, every unfinished sentence, and every broken alliance is pointing directly toward the storm that Episode 9 and the finale will bring. When we look at these final moments closely, the foreshadowing becomes clear. The galaxy is heading toward a breaking point, and no one, Hari, Gaal, the Cleons, or even the Foundation itself can escape what's coming. The first and most obvious shadow is the Mule. Even though he remains more of a presence than a character here, the hints surrounding him feel heavier than ever. His legend has been whispered across episodes, his influence felt before his full appearance. Episode 8 frames him like a storm waiting just beyond the horizon, and it is no accident that the final scenes build tension without release. This foreshadows that his full entrance will not only shift the balance of power but also challenge the very idea of psychohistory itself. If Hari has always insisted that history can be predicted, then the Mule is the living contradiction and unpredictable force who proves that no equation can account for chaos. The next episode will likely begin peeling back the layers of this thread, showing us not just what he wants, but why the universe itself seems unprepared to stop him. Then there is Gaal's uncertain path. The ending positions her as a central figure, standing at the intersection of Hari's vision, Salvor's sacrifice, and the Mule's rising danger. Her grief and hesitation in Episode 8 are not just emotional, they are narrative markers pointing to her role in what comes next. Will she continue to follow Hari's rigid plan, or will she allow her heart and instincts to push her toward a different path? The fact that the show leaves her choice unresolved is deliberate foreshadowing. It sets up the possibility that Gaal, not Hari, may hold the true power to shape the future, especially if she learns to step outside the shadow of psychohistory and make her own mark on destiny. The Cleonic dynasty's downfall is another thread tightly woven into the foreshadowing. This crumbling authority is not just the collapse of one man, it is the slow unraveling of centuries of engineered control. Episode 8's ending makes it clear that the dynasty cannot hold forever. This suggests that in the next episode, we may finally see the cracks split wide open, with Day either grasping at desperate measures or being consumed by his own weakness. The symbolism of an empire built on repetition now breaking apart hints that we are heading toward the true end of the genetic dynasty, something long foreshadowed but never fully realized until now. The next episodes could very well mark that historic fall. Another element foreshadowed in the silence of Episode 8 is the Foundation itself. For much of the story, the Foundation has been presented as the hidden hope for the galaxy, Hari's grand solution to the inevitable collapse of the Empire. But what if even the Foundation is not enough? The tension in Episode 8 suggests that Hari's plan is no longer flawless, that variables he never predicted, human emotion, betrayal, the Mule are threatening to dismantle the very system he created. This opens the door for Episode 9 to explore whether the Foundation can survive its own contradictions and whether its leaders will adapt or cling too tightly to a plan that no longer fits the chaos of reality. Finally, the entire tone of the ending points toward a finale that will be less about small battles and more about the collision of ideas. Hari's belief in fate versus the Mule's chaos. The Empire's illusion of power versus the Foundation's desperate hope. Gaal's personal grief versus her role in shaping history. The foreshadowing here is not settle the story, is setting up a grand clash where every theme we've discussed will collide in explosive ways. Episode 9 will likely tighten the noose, bringing all of these storylines closer together, while the finale will unleash the storm we've been waiting for. In the end, Episode 8 doesn't answer questions, it multiplies them. Who truly controls the future? Can the dynasty survive another blow? Is the Foundation enough to withstand the Mule's power? And most importantly, will Gaal rise as the leader the galaxy needs? Or will her hesitation doom everything? These are the questions left hanging in the silence, questions that will push us into Episode 9 and beyond. If Episode 8 is the moment where the galaxy holds its breath, then the next episodes are where it finally exhales and the explosion will shake everything we know about Foundation to its core. Power is crumbling, alliances are breaking, and secrets are finally surfacing. Foundation Season 3 Episode 8 throws us into a storm of betrayal and destiny, where every character's choice seems to push the galaxy closer to collapse. The ending doesn't just shock us, it forces us to question who is really in control. The Empire, Hari Seldon, or something far more dangerous waiting in the shadows. The episode begins by tightening the web of tension that has been building throughout this season. Hari Seldon continues to pull strings in the background, his presence guiding events like an invisible hand. His influence over Gaal and Salvor is stronger than ever, but there are cracks forming in his grand vision. Gaal's doubts about the path laid out for her show us that not everyone is willing to follow destiny blindly. This becomes more important as she struggles with the weight of Salvor's fate, which has already shaken her faith. Her emotional conflict becomes a mirror of the larger theme. Can the future truly be predicted, or can free will change the course of history? Meanwhile, the Empire faces one of its darkest hours. The Cleonic dynasty, once seen as unshakable, is now visibly fragile. They, constantly challenged by both internal and external forces, is forced to question his identity and power. The cracks within the dynasty are widening, and what once felt like an eternal cycle of control is now clearly vulnerable. The show cleverly frames this downfall not as a sudden collapse, but as a slow erosion, one decision at a time, one betrayal at a time. Salvor's journey in this episode carries a heavy emotional weight. Her choices, her sacrifices, and her connection to Gaal give the story a deeply personal touch. She represents not just the cost of war and destiny, but also the heart of resistance against forces too large to fully understand her absence in. The final moments leaves both the characters and the audience with a lingering sense of loss and uncertainty. At the same time, the looming presence of external threats grows clearer. The Mule, whose shadow has been hinted at throughout the season, begins to feel like an unavoidable storm on the horizon. His arrival is not just a new chapter, it is the promise of an entirely new scale of conflict that threatens both the Foundation and the Empire. Episode 8 sets the stage by reminding us that the battles we see between dynasties and mathematicians are only the beginning of a much larger struggle. The final act of this recap centers on how everything seems to be converging. The Foundation's mission, the Empire's weakening grip, Hari's long game, and the Mule's looming power are all heading toward a single explosive point. The brilliance of Episode 8 is that it doesn't give us a clear answer. Instead, it places every piece on the board and dares us to wonder who will strike first, who will fall, and who will rise from the ashes of everything collapsing. The ending of Foundation Season 3 Episode 8 is where everything that has been quietly building suddenly collides. It doesn't give us comfort or clarity, instead, it throws us deeper into uncertainty. The final act begins with tension across multiple fronts, and the editing cuts between characters in a way that makes us feel like everyone is standing on the edge of a cliff. Every decision, every word, feels like it carries the weight of the galaxy. One of the most striking parts of the ending is Hari Seldon's presence. He doesn't need to shout or make grand gestures. His calm, measured influence is far more terrifying. He has always insisted that history follows a path, that psychohistory cannot be changed, but in this episode we see cracks in that certainty. His quiet manipulation of events starts to feel less like guidance and more like control. Viewers are left to wonder, is Hari truly trying to protect the future? Or has he become so obsessed with his predictions that he can no longer see the human cost? The closing scenes amplify this question, leaving us unsettled about whether he is savior or tyrant in disguise. On the other side of the story, the Cleonic dynasty faces humiliation that can no longer be hidden. Day, who once projected unshakable dominance, is now a leader scrambling for control. The way he reacts to betrayal in these final moments tells us everything about his fragile state. His words are sharp, but they no longer inspire fear the way they once did. Instead, they reveal desperation. This breakdown of his authority is symbolically powerful. It represents not just the fall of a man, but the crumbling of an entire system built on illusion and repetition. The dynasty, which claimed eternal rule, suddenly feels as fragile as glass. Then there is Gaal. Her role in the ending is subtle but emotionally explosive. She stands torn between two worlds, the one Hari insists must unfold, and the one her heart desperately wants to protect. The scene where she struggles with Salvor's absence lingers in the silence, forcing us to feel her pain without a single word spoken. That grief shapes her decisions, making her more vulnerable to both Hari's influence and the coming storm represented by the Mule. The final shot of her, framed against uncertainty, feels like a promise. Her next choices could reshape everything, for better or worse. But perhaps the most haunting element of the ending is the shadow of the Mule. He doesn't even need to be on screen fully to dominate the scene. His presence is hinted at in whispers, visions, and fears that ripple through the characters. It feels as if the universe itself is bending toward his arrival. The closing moments make it clear. Whatever conflicts we've seen so far, Hari versus the Empire, Foundation versus Destiny, are just preludes to something far more terrifying. The Mule is not just another villain. He is the storm that threatens to erase everything we thought we understood about power, history, and survival. The brilliance of Episode 8's ending lies in its restraint. It doesn't explode into action or tie everything up with neat answers. Instead, it leaves us with silence, hesitation, and the chilling realization that the game board has completely shifted. The Foundation's mission is unstable. The Empire's grip is failing. Hari's vision is questioned, and the Mule looms closer with every breath. The ending doesn't feel like closure, it feels like the beginning of something far larger. As if the real story is only just starting to reveal itself. The ending of Episode 8 is not just about events, it's about the deeper ideas that run like veins through the entire story of Foundation. If we look closely, every choice, every downfall, and every silence in the closing scenes is connected to the larger themes of fate, power, and survival. The brilliance of this show is that it doesn't lecture us about these ideas, it shows them to us through the struggles of its characters. One of the strongest themes is the eternal clash between fate and free will. Hari Seldon has built his entire existence on the belief that psychohistory can predict the future. To him, people are not individuals but pieces in a larger puzzle, predictable in their patterns. But Gaal's resistance, Salvor's sacrifice, and even the Mule's looming threat push back against this idea. The ending of Episode 8 brings this conflict into sharp focus. Is history a river that cannot be changed, or can one person's choice break the current? The way Gaal hesitates, the way Hari insists, and the way the Mule's shadow looms all feel like different answers to the same question. Then there's the theme of power and its illusion. The Cleonic dynasty has always claimed permanence, presenting itself as eternal through the cycle of cloned emperors. But in Episode 8, that illusion crumbles. Day is not a godlike ruler, he is just a man trapped in fear, trying desperately to hold on to control. The dynasty's downfall shows us that even the grandest systems of power are fragile when built on lies. The symbolism here is sharp. The clones were meant to erase individuality, but in the end, individuality, weakness, pride, desperation is exactly what tears them apart. The empire doesn't collapse in one grand explosion, it decays from the inside like a rotten foundation slowly giving way. Another important layer is the theme of sacrifice and legacy. Salvor's fate hangs heavily over the episode, and even though she doesn't dominate the ending physically, her absence is everywhere. She becomes a symbol of the cost of resistance. Her choices show that shaping the future isn't free, it demands pain, loss, and sometimes even life itself. For Gaal, Salvor's sacrifice is more than just personal, it's a reminder that every choice she makes now carries the weight of not just her own destiny, but of everyone who has given something to keep hope alive. This symbolism adds emotional gravity to Gaal's role moving forward. The ending also whispers a theme of rebirth through collapse. Foundation as a story has always been about cycles. Empires rise, empires fall, and from the ashes something new emerges. Episode 8's closing moments capture that perfectly. We see an empire collapsing, but in that collapse, the space for something new is created. Hari's plan, the Foundation's survival, and even the Mule's terrifying rise all fit into this cycle. It is almost as if the universe demands collapse before it allows creation. The symbolism in the episode's final imagery, darkness, silence, lingering uncertainty, suggests that destruction is not the end but the necessary step before renewal.